A poorly thought out prank on my girlfriend's family caused our breakup and landed me in legal trouble. On one weekend, my girlfriend and her family were set to go on a camping trip. It was a big family gathering that included her parents, her younger sister, her aunt, and uncle, and 3 cousins. They had been planning this trip for quite some time, and the excitement was high. My girlfriend had told me everything about their plans, including the campsite location. I decided to pull a prank on them and took advantage of knowing where they would be staying. Before they left, I went to my girlfriend's house to say goodbye and wish her a great trip. As soon as they drove off, I got into my car and made my way to the campsite. Since I knew the area well, I managed to park my car out of sight and navigate through the woods to keep an eye on them without being seen. My plan was to scare them at night, but I didn't realize just how badly it would go. As night fell, I dressed in a Chewbacca costume. I made it look wild and messy to give the appearance of a Bigfoot-like creature. When the family gathered around their campfire, I hid in the bushes nearby and began rustling them. At first, they didn't think much of it. Then I started growling and making strange noises, which made them uneasy. My girlfriend's uncle eventually decided to investigate the noise and began walking toward my hiding spot. When he got close, I jumped out of the bushes, roaring and pretending to be a creature. I shook their tents, threw some chairs, and even chased a few of her cousins. I thought it was funny, but when I heard my girlfriend's dad yell, "Get the gun!" I realized the joke had gone too far. Panicking, I quickly removed my costume and revealed my identity. The entire family was furious. I got yelled at by nearly everyone. The noise from my antics had also attracted the campsite manager, who decided to kick me out after hearing what happened. Embarrassed, I left, realizing I had ruined their trip. Days later, I heard back from my girlfriend for the first time since the prank. She told me she was seriously considering breaking up with me. She said she needed time to think before making a decision. Her words left me feeling humiliated and uncertain. I wanted to fix things but didn't know how. Later, my girlfriend's family hosted a barbecue in their backyard. My girlfriend convinced her dad to let me attend so I could apologize to everyone for the camping trip incident. Though he initially didn't want me there, he agreed on the condition that I start with a sincere apology. When I arrived, everyone I had pranked at the campsite was sitting at a table. I joined them and began my apology. I admitted that the prank was thoughtless, immature, and poorly timed. I expressed regret for ruining their camping trip, which they had been looking forward to for so long. After I finished speaking, there was an awkward silence. Then, my girlfriend's uncle leaned over and whispered something to her dad. They both burst out laughing, but I couldn't hear what was said. Her dad then announced that he did not accept my apology and told me to leave. Shocked, I responded loudly, saying, "What the fuck?" This outburst only made things worse. Her dad insisted I leave, but I lost my temper. I swiped a plastic cup off the table and shouted, "Fine, fuck all of you," while flipping them off with both middle fingers. As I walked away, my girlfriend followed me and told me she was breaking up with me. She said I was too immature and impulsive, and she wanted me to stay away from her and her family. I tried to apologize repeatedly, begging her for another chance and promising to change. However, she told me she had given me too many chances already and couldn't fix me. As she walked away, I became even angrier. I yelled at her, calling her a bitch, and then began kicking and punching their wooden fence. I ended up breaking part of it before leaving. Since that night, I've felt terrible. Part of me wants to move on, but another part still wants to prove I can change. I considered promising her no more pranks and working on controlling my temper. However, I wasn't sure if it was worth trying anymore. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about my ex-girlfriend. I struggled to eat, sleep, or find joy in anything I used to enjoy. Even things I had been excited about before, like watching my first hockey game, felt meaningless. All I could do was think about her and how I had lost her because of my actions. One day, I came up with a plan to try winning her back. I thought about dressing up as Bigfoot again, but this time, not to scare anyone. Instead, I planned to go to her backyard with a stereo and play Sorry by Buckcherry. I hoped this twist on the classic apology with a stereo gesture would make her see I was truly sorry. That night, I put on the Chewbacca costume, grabbed an old stereo, and headed to her house. We lived in the same neighborhood, so I took a shortcut through a wooded area. When I reached her backyard, I stood on the grass, holding the stereo above my head while the song played. Unfortunately, the stereo was old and didn't play very loudly. The sound was muffled, and I didn't dare move closer to the house for fear of being seen. Frustrated, I set the stereo down and looked through the window of her room. She was sitting on her bed, playing with her phone. I stood there staring, caught up in seeing her after so long, when I realized someone on a nearby porch was watching me. Panicking, I turned to leave but stupidly tried to enter her house by pulling on the back door. Her mom saw me and screamed. I ran back to the woods, leaving the stereo behind because I hurt my back trying to pick it up. The next morning, I received a voicemail from my ex-girlfriend. She told me she knew it was me and warned me to stay away or she would contact the police to file harassment charges and seek a restraining order. She made it clear we were never getting back together and told me to move on. Her words crushed me. Physically, I was in pain from my back injury, and emotionally, I felt completely defeated. To make matters worse, her dad later texted me a picture of my destroyed stereo next to a baseball bat, with a message threatening to harm me if I came near their house again. I considered taking action against her dad for destroying my property and threatening me, but I decided it wasn't worth escalating things further. In the following weeks, I focused on trying to move on. It was difficult, especially with memories of our time together constantly on my mind. My older brother's wedding was approaching, and I dreaded the event because it reminded me of the plans my ex and I had made to attend it together. Seeing her sell her dress online was like another punch to the gut. Halloween came, and I ended up taking my little cousin trick-or-treating. I wore the Chewbacca costume since it was the only outfit I had. As we walked through the neighborhood, we inevitably passed my ex's house. Her parents were outside handing out candy, and her dad spotted me immediately. He yelled, "I see you," making it clear he recognized me. I quickly grabbed my cousin and hurried home. An hour later, the police arrived at my house. Her dad was pressing charges against me for stalking and harassment. Now, I'm awaiting a court date and feeling overwhelmed. I didn't have any plans to go near her house or interact with her family. I was just trick-or-treating with my cousin, but her dad was determined to label me as a stalker. Adding to my frustration, my ex sent me drunk text messages celebrating the fact that I was facing legal trouble. Her messages were cruel, and I responded by calling her names in anger. However, my retaliation only left me feeling worse. I realized I needed to let go and stop trying to get back at her or her family. My actions had already caused enough damage, and I had to focus on moving forward. As much as I missed her, I knew I couldn't keep holding on to the hope of reconciliation. It was time to accept that the relationship was over and take responsibility for my mistakes. Moving on was painful, but I knew it was the only way to truly begin healing.